Well, we started out as a cell church movement, and so we had some multiplication DNA in us. At that point in time, we were multiplying whole groups, where a group would get to a certain size and it would multiply and send a group out. And so that, and with the Bhojpuri people groups influence, we've continued to have a multiplication DNA. And so with mostly assimilation-based groups, we've seen multiplication happen to one stream to the fifth generation, and then several other streams to fourth generation. We've got several more that are probably on the verge of fourth generation groups. And some of those groups are now reaching the lost and people who would be disconnected from our church.
We run about 4,000 on the weekends. Wow. Right now, 5 campuses, all Lubbock area.
I think what we're wanting to see happen and the vision that God has given us, I would want anyone to have, because I think God's given us a vision for 1 million people in the panhandle of Texas. I think what we have realized is that the strategy that we've been employing is not going to fulfill the mission that God has given us. And so from that standpoint, what we are looking to employ and the shifts that we're wanting to make in our strategy, yes, I would say. I think we believe the shifts that we're wanting to make in our strategy will enable us to be able to feasibly reach that number. I would say, we were reading Roy Moran's book, Spent Matches, and one of the things that really stood out to us was just from a practical sense, just the cost per baptism in America, and it made us examine our own cost per baptism. But in America, I believe it was in the neighborhood of 1.5 million plus per baptism, and us thinking that we were going to reach 1 million people, we thought, gosh, we got to figure out what our cost per baptism, what would it cost to baptize 1 million people in our region? And for us, we learned that we were just under $5,000 per baptism, which meant, at 1 million people, what is that? Is that 5 billion? I don't know the math on that.
Pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close. And so we quickly realized that there's no way with our current model and our current strategy that we would be able to reach and baptize 1 million people at that kind of cost. So it's caused us to shift our strategy, and we begin to think, well, who is reaching millions? And we've had a connection with the Bhojpuri movement in northern India, and we think, well, they've been reaching millions, so what are they doing? What can we learn from them? And so the main shift in our strategy recently has been, because we haven't really seen movement happen yet, is just that we want to be coached by the people who are reaching millions. And so we think in America, American pastors have been great at reaching thousands, but if we're going to reach 1 million, then we need to be coached by the people who are reaching millions. And so as we've been coached by them, I think the things that have stood out to us is that we need to be obedience-based, with disciples making disciples, and we need to employ a strategy that can rapidly happen.
You asked, should you want to be like us, and man, we've seen over 6,000 people baptized in less than 9 years. We've seen over 11,000 people come to Christ in less than 9 years. So yeah, from an American church model, we have been very successful. But then when we start doing the math of just to reach the 1 million people in our region, that's going to take 100 years. Do we have 100 years? And by then there's going to be 1 million more people born and 1 million probably gone to hell between now and then. So it's just that it's not that the model's bad, but the model's about addition and not multiplication. And so we're never going to reach our goal of just reaching our region. And, we were exposed to multiplication models, CPM, DMM, through international friends who we see reaching millions, and we just began asking the question, why can't that be the case here?
Mm-hmm.
Well, why do we have to say, well, that's what they do there, but we can't do it here? And we've just gotten to the place where we refuse to accept the fact that that can't happen here. And so, but in order for it to happen, we've got to change our strategy. And we've just decided we're not going to be content with just reaching another 10,000 in 10 years, even though from an American perspective that would be seen as very successful. We could have great salaries, we could get applauded a lot, but that's really not what God's called us to. He's called us to reach millions, and so we're not going to do it the way we've been doing it.
I'd say at this point we are looking at being Roy Moran disciples and employing the hybrid approach, at least for a time. I think we'll continue to have our weekend gathering, but just real practically, I think what we're looking to do is, as best as we can, transition the 150 to 200 groups to employing DMM strategies, but then at the same time, starting fresh with some of our own groups that we're personally leading, with believers and unbelievers, to multiply those groups with disciple-making strategies. Because I think we want to, no matter what, we want to do the best that we can to take what God has given us and transition that into a disciple-making movement. At the same time, I don't think we're also not saying we're going to put all our eggs in the basket of trying to transition what we've got. I think we're also going to start some things alongside that, and hopefully both result in movements. And if at some point those movements are sustaining in and of themselves and not needing the weekend environment, then I think we're open to that. So that would be something we'd have to continue to evaluate as we get down the road.
Yeah, and I think what we've seen right now with our attractional model does have the ability to fuel and fund the DMM model. So we're not sure right now it would even be wise to just discard what God has blessed, because we know in our culture, to some extent at least, it works, and people have come to Christ. But then how can we leverage that towards movement, as opposed to just being content with continuing with the attractional model?
I would say now what we're looking to do is infiltrate our current system and groups and streams with coaching and training on DMM principles, where everybody in the group would be challenged to be a disciple that's going to go out and start a movement that could be totally disconnected from e-life. And so one of the things we've worked with just recently our leaders on is everyone in the group leading the current group to get some experience, and then challenging them, rather than bringing people into the group that they invite, their family, friends, coworkers, neighbors. We're challenging them to, rather than bringing them to the group, to start groups for those people. And so as we've been challenging people to do that, we've had several groups start up here recently by a person in a group just going out and starting a new group for people without really taking anybody with them, just going out and planting a new group, discovery group for those people. So I would say what we're currently doing is trying to train our leaders that we do have on discovery principles, becoming more obedience-based, and becoming more multiplication movement in their focus.